Hey, it's Brewbird. In the previous video, we talked about what sensory analysis is. In this video, I want to focus on how to create your own sensory panel. And this is quite a long process, so this video will focus specifically on how to recruit panelists. So, let's go! I'm sure a lot of you have very casually conducted sensory panels before. Maybe you've invited some friends over to your house and opened some bottles of wine or cans of beer or bottles of whiskey. Then you'd ask your friends, oh, how does it taste? Which we learned in the last video is a descriptive question. Or you've asked them, which is your least favorite? Which is your favorite? Which we learned is an affective question. Now that's an example of a very, very casual sensory panel. But what I want to talk about is how to create a highly formal and trained sensory panel. The kind that you might find at a multi-million-dollar beverage or food company. So let's imagine for a second that we are in charge of creating our own sensory panel at a very big brewery. Let's call it Miss Brewbird's Brewery. It has a nice ring to it. One of the first things we'll need to do is recruit people to be our sensory panelists. So how many people do we need to recruit? Our aim is to recruit a large enough group that we have a good pool to select from. So we'll recruit 80 to 100 people initially, pre-screen them until we have about 45 candidates, and then reduce these candidates down to 25 after screening. And then we'll have 16 to 20 people left at the end of our formalized training. Training is very expensive, so we can't afford to train all 80 or 100 people that are interested. It's essential that we choose people who are most likely to respond well to our training. Recruiting panelists really depends on the situation that you're in. So if you're working at a brew pub, you will just recruit whoever you can. If you're at a microbrewery, then you'll recruit everyone that is working for you. And if you're at a very large brewery, then you can recruit people that are motivated and really want to be there. One of the rules for recruiting someone onto a sensory panel is that you don't try to recruit someone who isn't interested. Someone that's motivated and wants to be there will make for a much better panelist than someone that doesn't want to be there. Rule 2 is that you should foster an open door culture. So potential panelists should feel comfortable expressing their feelings and their opinions. Otherwise, when it comes to doing sensory analysis tests, you don't want a panelist who's closed-lipped. You want them to be able to openly and freely express their opinions. And this is especially important when it comes to descriptive tests. Rule 3 is that potential panelists should be willing to follow a strict set of ground rules, such as not smoking or drinking coffee 30 minutes before the test, and arriving to the test on time. Usually sensory panels are held in the morning because we don't want people to eat breakfast or drink coffee or be smoking before the panel sessions, as that can really ruin your palate and affect the way you are tasting your samples. So we want to avoid that. So when we're screening our panelists, we want to make sure that they're generally in good health, they have strong verbal skills, they are prompt and on time, and that they have an interest in sensory analysis, and also that they're available to be there for 70 to 80% of the tests that we hold. Some other things to keep in mind when you're screening for panelists are that women are generally better tasters than men. There, I said it. And I was told this numerous times by my sensory teacher, who was a man. According to a 2014 article by The Drinks Business, women are better tasters than men. Dr. Deborah Parker, the Associate Director at UK Sensory Research Specialists Marketing Scientists, stated that only 10 to 15% of the population have the sensory acuity to be a sensory taste panelist. And when we give consumers a sensory test, women always do better. She did add that after both sexes have been through Marketing Sciences sensory training program, men and women perform the same. She suggested that women may be better discriminators because of mothering, so they always have to taste and smell different things before giving them to their children, which gives them an inherent ability to screen foods and drinks. Another thing to keep in mind is that as we get older, we lose our sense of taste and smell. So you might have experienced this with your grandma or grandpa, and they cook for you, and you try and you're like, oh, this is really salty. And that's because they're losing their sense of taste and smell. So to compensate, they have to over-salt their food in order for them to taste it. The average person is born with roughly 9,000 taste buds, according to Stephen Parnes, an ENT otolaryngologist. These taste buds cover your tongue and send taste signals to the brain through nerves. The taste buds vary in sensitivity to different kinds of tastes, with some being really good at sensing sweetness while others are more attuned to bitter flavors and so on. Taste buds are generally good at regenerating, and the cells replace themselves every 1 to 2 weeks, but aging changes this ability. The amount of taste and smell loss is variable from person to person, but is really noticeable from the ages of 60 and onwards. So those are 2 other considerations when you're screening for panelists. But the most important thing is interest, because if a person is motivated and interested in sensory analysis, then you can coach them and teach them how to become a better panelist for you. In summary, when we're screening our panelists, we want to make sure that they're in general good health, so they don't have any allergies, colds, they aren't pregnant, and that they're able to refrain from smoking and eating and drinking for at least 30 minutes before tasting. We want them to be interested in what we're doing, and that they'll be able to attend at least 70 to 80% of our sessions, that they'll be on time, and we want them to have strong verbal skills so they can communicate what they're tasting, and also that they're able to concentrate. There are a variety of tests that we can do with our panelists to screen them. So for example, we could do a triangle test where we have 3 beers in front of them, and in one of the beers we spike it with some salt or some other ingredient, and they should be able to pick that odd sample out. We could also present the potential panelist with a ranking test. So we have 5 samples of beer, and the first sample has no salt in it, the second sample has a little bit of salt, and then we double the amount of salt in the third sample, triple it, and then quadruple it in the last sample. And we ask the potential panelists to rank the beers in order of least salty to most salty. These are examples of 2 tests we could do in order to pick our panelists. The purpose of the screening tests are to assess the differences between candidates. We're checking if they have any sensory impairments, if they can communicate effectively, if they can recognize attributes, and if they're able to discriminate attribute intensity of the characteristics. So an example of that was grading the beers based on the intensity of their saltiness. And the problem of doing tests quickly like this is that we might reject tasters that might improve significantly with training. So just keep in mind that the best panel will result if selection is based on potential rather than on current performance during the screening tests. I hope you enjoyed learning how to recruit panelists for your sensory panel. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how to train your panelists. So watch out for that one. In the meantime, please support the channel by giving this video a thumbs up, leaving a comment down below, and hitting the subscribe button for more distilling, brewing, and drinks videos. This is Brewbird, sending good vibes your way. I'll see you next time!